The Psoriasis Journey, Part 3. Here's what I learned. Diet. What we eat and drink obviously affects our health. We're made of the food we eat. Julissa said that if we change the food we eat, then we change the body that we end up with. When I thought about that, it made perfect sense. Now I've been on diets before and I never found one I liked. So the word, diet, doesn't fill me with happiness. However, I found that her advice wasn't specifically about dieting or restrictions, not in the way I'd done before when trying to lose weight. It was simply about adopting new habits. So when I put her advice into practice, I more or less ate as much food as I liked. And I did lose about 5 pounds of fat in the first month or so. But that wasn't part of what the program promises. It's just a side effect really of eating well. Please note, if you're underweight, you might want to speak with your doctor before following Julissa's advice. But there are some fairly obvious food truths that are widely known. And the main one is that some foods simply harm you. They contain little or nothing that your body needs. And, instead, some of them contain elements that your body actively does not want. Give your body too much of what it doesn't want, and it will tell you about it, sometimes in the most unpleasant ways. The wrong foods can promote the very inflammation that, as a psoriasis sufferer, I knew was causing me absolute misery. And, to be truthful, there is no food that tastes so good, that I'd suffer psoriasis for it. You might feel the same way. But I do like my food. Too much at times. And yet Julissa explained that done right, I could eat chocolate and peanut desserts, sweet and savory dips and pancakes, flapjacks, ice cream, and still see substantial improvements in the condition of my skin. For the few items I either stopped eating or reduced, there was an array of easily sourced alternatives. Some of the new foods she introduced me to weren't new at all. They were in my local supermarket all along, I'd simply not noticed them before. And those alternatives were absolutely delicious. Better, in fact, than what I'd been used to. So the remedy wasn't to stop eating foods I liked. It was to understand what I'm eating, what it's going to do to my skin, and so allow me to make choices that will positively affect my psoriasis. After 14 years of helpless obedience to doctors and specialists, this approach was a breath of fresh air. And it gave me some control over my condition. I could actually do something about it myself. Lifestyle. Julissa explained that aside from diet, a person's lifestyle was one of the biggest influencers on their health. Man or woman, simple changes to your life habits can change your health, for the better or the worse. And the effects can be very quick. Some can be noticed that day. These are the factors of lifestyle that directly affected me as a psoriasis sufferer. Stress. Stress is a normal part of human life. But the way we experience it today was not how we were evolved to experience it. In times past, a human would be attacked by a wild beast or a ferocious tribe. Stress went through the roof, soaking him in the chemicals, need to either fight the threat or to flee from it. Once the danger had passed, so too did the stress. These days, that's not what happens to you and me. We don't fight wild beasts anymore. But instead, we suffer low-level stress almost all the time. Unlike our ancestors, for us there's rarely any let-up. We live by the clock, by the demands of work, colleagues, family, friends. Things that have to be done this particular way by that particular time. Even our leisure is structured and limited, requiring us to be at certain places at certain times. There are consequences if we do things wrong. Or if we're running late. And this gives rise to low-level but never-ending stress. And when we're stressed, we release the hormone cortisol. Which would be fine if that cortisol came and then went. As it's supposed to. Because under natural conditions, cortisol can actually be good for us. One of its effects is to lower inflammation, a positive good for sufferers of psoriasis. Unfortunately, for most of us, cortisol doesn't come and then just go. Modern living creates ongoing, low-level background stress. There are always things to be done, relationships to be navigated, deadlines to be met and routines to be observed. We're always bathed in cortisol. and ongoing cortisol production, leads to a condition called cortisol dysfunction. And what are the symptoms of cortisol dysfunction? Widespread inflammation and pain. Exactly what a psoriasis sufferer least needs. Mindset. Everyone has physical health. And everyone has mental health. Your physical health might be good. Or it might be bad. Same with mental health. You may have good mental health or poor mental health. That's fairly obvious. In all likelihood, your mental health will sit somewhere between good and bad. Hopefully, closer to good than bad. But the better your mental health, the less likely you'll trigger psoriasis. Doctors have proved over and over the connection between your general emotional state and the functioning of your immune system. In short, happier people have healthier immune systems. So they get ill less. Nevertheless, I'm a little skeptical about that happy thinking stuff. I always accepted that we have our worries and doubts about ourselves, and that the best way to deal with them is to just get on with it. But I learned from Julissa that the way we think generally, and the way we think about ourselves specifically, has unavoidable knock-on effects. Do we approve of ourselves? Do we think we're good enough? Do we even like ourselves? Strong negative thinking affects men and women, and is a component of diseases like depression, which makes a person highly susceptible to disease and illness. But we don't have to be depressed for our moods, our general feelings to weaken our immune systems. As with the low-level stress just mentioned, low-level but ongoing feelings of nervousness, anxiety, worry, or doubts about yourself, your relationships, your self-worth, will wear you down mentally. Just the absence of regular positive, uplifting thoughts are bad for the immune system, and it's in the immune system that our psoriasis troubles start. I suffered psoriasis. Were my thoughts about myself at an all-time high? Heck, no. At various times I was highly self-conscious. About the way I looked. About the way people looked at me. About the constant itching. I pride myself on being a strong and independent thinker, but I am only human, and my condition lowered my opinion of myself. Again, you don't need medically recognized low self-esteem for it to be affecting you. As Julissa pointed out, millions of people grind on in life, and simply ignore their feelings. But our feelings don't ignore us. And our feelings, if left unaddressed, drag us down. That makes perfect sense. The evidence for this exists throughout the world. And it was obvious to me that in any case, it's better to have healthy, self-approving thoughts about yourself, regardless of faults, than to have underlying doubts about your own value. Julissa's guide was eye-opening in this respect. With or without psoriasis, the questions she asked me about my thoughts about myself were revealing. I didn't realize how I felt about myself, until I was encouraged to think about it. And her simple remedies for some of the low thoughts I discovered I had, quite literally transformed the way I thought, about me, other people and the world I lived in. Sleep. I think we all recognize sleep's value to our health and well-being. But Julissa explained just how vital sleep is to health, and to me as a person with psoriasis. Sleep is a detoxifier. Which means that, amongst other things, it facilitates the cleaning out of your body. By day, your various body systems burn energy, process food, breathe, and so on. There's a lot of waste byproducts associated with all this. And it's during deep sleep that your body calms, switches functions down, and so dramatically reduces its waste production. But the day's waste still has to be dealt with. Deep sleep is when the cleansing routines can take place. So what happens if sleep isn't deep enough? What if quality sleep isn't consistent enough? As I discovered, the consequences of not sleeping soundly every night can be very bad on the body's self-cleansing efforts. It simply doesn't get the job done. And if it can't get yesterday's debris removed, before the new day starts adding to it, you run into problems. Waste builds up. The immune system then has to start fighting infections, which leads to inflammation. And inflammation is exactly what we don't want, when we are already suffering psoriasis. We must sleep long and soundly, if our bodies are to cleanse and recover properly. I also learned that even though I thought I was sleeping soundly, that isn't necessarily the case. We don't always notice that our sleep is disturbed. When I practiced Julissa's sleep habits, I felt the effects of improved sleep after just 2 days. Her simple advice just made sleeping that much more satisfying. And, to be honest, even if it hadn't led to the clearing up of my psoriasis, I would still be glad of my sleep improvements. They just made me feel better during the day. Stay tuned for the psoriasis journey, part 4.